These are my favorite Italian mafia nicknames. First is Anthony Gaspipe Casso. Isn't rocket science to figure out why they called him Gaspipe. In his prime, Gaspipe was one of the most ruthless bosses in his day. Matter of fact, probably of all time. So much so that he was actually even breaking rules going after family, like women, mothers, and children. All while being a government informant. Absolutely insane. Next is Sammy the Bull Gravano. Now, people of course call him Sammy the Rat Gravano, because if you do not know, Sammy is the most recognizable rat in mafia history. Being the underboss to John Gotti, he at that point was the highest ranking mafia member to flip, and was the final nail in the coffin to John Gotti and pretty much anybody that he really ratted on. But frankly, the name Sammy the Bull itself is fucking hard, and he got it when he was like 11 or 12. He was so hard-headed, so stubborn, and always willing to get into fights, folks around the neighborhood started calling him the Bull. Next is Vincent the Chin Gigante, also known as the Oddfather. In my personal opinion, Vince probably was the smartest mafia boss of all time. The reason why he is called the Oddfather is because he pretended to be mentally insane for over 20 years. Literally, the most powerful man in New York City is walking around the streets in his robes, drilling, and just talking in tongues. But I put him on this list because his name was the Chin. They called him the Chin not only because of his boxing history going undefeated, willing to take a punch, but mostly the fact that he was so powerful in his prime that you couldn't even say his name. Literally, when referring to him, mobsters would have to point or scratch their chin. Gigante, for a matter of fact, was so elusive that when prosecutors thought that they had all 5 families' bosses, he wasn't one of them. This is one of the most sought-out criminal trials in New York history, and they didn't even get the right guy because this guy was so undercover. Next up is Greg the Grim Reaper Scarpa. Again, don't really need to go into detail as to why they called him the Grim Reaper. Only the fact that is haunting that he lived in a world like the mafia and the mobsters and what they do, that other mobsters looked at him and said, yeah, this guy's so fucked, he's the Grim Reaper. Funny enough, he would actually die because of AIDS. Not because AIDS itself is funny, but the irony as to how he got it. He actually needed a blood transfusion, and this is around the late 80s, early 90s, and didn't trust the blood from hospitals even though it was screened due to the AIDS epidemic. He actually wanted to use blood from one of his guys. The dude was a bodybuilder, and ironically, he actually had AIDS because he contracted it by using a needle from another bodybuilder. And finally, the best one by far is Albert the Lord's High Executioner Anastasia, also more recognized as the Mad Hatter. Those are the 2 hardest fucking nicknames, and he has both of them. The reason why he gained those titles is because he was the boss of Murder Incorporated. Back when the commission was first formed, all the various families had a wing designated only to do hits, and that was eventually his crew. He would go on to actually go ahead and hit his boss, start his own family, but eventually was taken out by a young up-and-comer, who would eventually be regarded as the most powerful and successful mob boss in history.